Hi, everyone. This is Tracy from the Fairborn branch of the Greene County Library. I'm here today to talk to you about how do you start your genealogy research. I've had people ask, how do we get started? I've never done this before, and it can be very overwhelming and intimidating, and you don't know where to start, how to begin, or anything like that. So I'm going to teach you guys some tricks and some tips on how to get started so you can begin your own genealogy excursion. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. Maybe, possibly. Here we go. Okay. So how do we even get started with our genealogy research? The first thing you need to do is going to be figure out what you want to accomplish and why you're starting your research. Are you starting your research to learn about a specific story? We heard a story once that our family immigrated to the United States because they were a horse thief and they were trying not to be hung in the country they were from. So they escaped and ran here, and that's how we came to America. Turns out it wasn't true, but it was an interesting story, and I wanted to find out if it was. Are you trying to learn about a specific person? Do you want to know more about your great grandpa or your grandfather? Was he in World War II and you're wanting to find out what he did then or what their jobs were? Are you trying to find out what country you came from, what region you came from, what your ancestry actually is? Or are you trying to check facts like our family has always lived in this one area of Ohio and this is the only place we've ever been? These are all reasons I have heard people have started research, and to some degree, I've used all of them in my own research. So always start with that, excuse me, and make sure you keep that in mind as you're doing your research because you will get distracted and go down rabbit holes. And you want to be able to come back to why am I even doing this? So the first thing you need to do is start with what you know. Start with the information you know, especially about yourself, and write it down. And you can do that in a couple different ways. You can do it on family group sheets, pedigree charts, which I'm going to show you here in a minute, or you can just use a notebook and a pen. Make sure you get some folders because at some point in time you're going to have a lot of stuff too. But these are the three main things you need when you first get started. So where do I find these forms that you're talking about? First, you can go to our website, greenlibrary.info. Under our resource tab, there's a local history and genealogy. You click that and it'll pop up the ancestry edition. This has PDFs you can download and you can type into them. You can also go to ancestry.com and it allows you to download the forms without a subscription that you just download and print. And you can see here where they are. Or you can do a Google search for which form you're looking for, the family group sheet or the pedigree chart, and they will bring up literally thousands of these that you can use. So lots of options. Now let's look at what these are so you know what you're looking for. So first up, we have a family group sheet. This is used to kind of keep track of who is who. Who's the husband in the relationship? Who's the wife in the relationship? Who are their children? And who are the grandparents in the relationship? Most family group sheets have all of this information, if not more. Some have less, some have more, but kind of the basics are all here. So what you would do first, like let's say I was doing myself, I would put my name down here, my birth date, where I was born, when and where I got married, who I got married to, and I'm not dead, thank goodness, because this video would be very weird if I was. So I leave that blank. Put my gender over here. That way, when I'm researching, I can keep track of these. Now, some of this sounds really silly, like I know my own information. Why am I doing this? This is to get you to practice, to learn how the form works, and to learn where to find this information. So then I would put my mother's name with her maiden name, what job she had, what her religion was, if I know it. I know that sounds silly right now, but as you do your research, you'll start looking at, you may not necessarily have state issued birth or death records. It may be in the church, like a church record or a church newspaper, or like with the Catholic Church, they actually kept records of this. I know Quakers did this as well, that you can actually go back and look at like the church history of the church logbooks, and you can see when people passed away, when they had funeral services. So even though it sounds kind of silly to have their religion and what church they went to, it can help later on. And like I said, this is just to get you in good habits, good practices starting now. You may or may not have these boxes. Don't worry about it. Don't stress out about it. Fill in what you know. Birth, christening, died, buried, who her parents were. So in this column here, in this specific form, this is where you put the dates. These are the cities. This is the country or county rather, and then this is the state or country that it happened in. Again, as time goes on, these things are going to be more and more needed for you, and they will help with your research as you go. And you do the same thing for your father or the husband of the. I put my father here, all of his jobs, his religion, and all of his information in. Another thing you may want to do, and this is something I learned the hard way, is on this ancestral chart, I'll show you on the next, the pedigree chart. This helps you keep track of where you are in your family tree, which page you're on. Now, some of these have other forms where they put in census records that you can keep track of, or if you have birth, marriage, and death records. To keep things a little simpler for myself, I just went over here on the side and wrote the years that they would have had census records for them. So like my dad was born in 1950. So I would put in 1950, that's the only census he would be in. My grandparents would have been in the 20, 30, 40, and 50 census. So I would write all those down. And as I found them, I would just cross them off to say, hey, I've located them, I found them. Save me another form to fill out later. Same thing over here, I would put if I had found a birth record, marriage, death, obituary, any other information that I learned as I was going on to keep track of. And this was just kind of like my overall cover sheet, keep everything together. What information am I missing? What do I need to find the next bit of information? So let's say I was trying to find out what my great 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 grandfather's occupation was. Well, first I would need to know who my great great grandfather was. So after I filled out the sheet for my family with me as a child, I would get another sheet out and I would put my father down. Here is the children and fill back in as far as I could. Then I would put my grandfather down here and keep going back as far as I could. You may have to stop and look for information and fill it in. And that's fine. That's part of what the research is. But this is kind of a way to keep track of where you are and what you need. Next up, we have the pedigree chart. And up here, it has chart number. This is what you would put here. That way you know which page you're on. So you know who's who, and you can keep track of, oh, yeah, that's my parent, grandparent, great-grandparent, great-great-grandparent, and so on all the way through. So what you would do here is you would put yourself here. This is your parents, grandparents, great-grandparents. And then you can continue on as you need it. It's like if you wanted to do your grandparents' parents, you would put your grandfather here and do back his family, and your grandmother here and go back. Typically in these type of charts, they put the father on top and the mother underneath. I don't know why, that's just how they do it. And that's how I was taught to do it. And most of the records that I've seen have all been the same way. The father on top, mother on the bottom, and you go backwards that way. And then you just fill it in. And this is kind of more of a visual way to keep track of this information. But this has a lot more information on it. This is kind of like a high level summary and kind of keeps things in order so you can visually see how far back you're going. So, like I said, you start with yourself and fill in backwards on the pedigree and family group sheets. I do a family group sheet for every family that I need to research. So I wouldn't necessarily do one for my cousins or my aunt or uncle unless I'm researching their family. I tend to just do what families do I need to get back to my goal. So if I'm looking for why did my great great grandfather come here, I would do strictly the grandparents, great grandparents, and so on. And then you find the documentation for your facts. I like to have 2 to 3 sources per fact if I can. So if I say the birthday is this date, I have a birth certificate, a marriage license, or a death certificate to prove that this date is the date it says. Kind of like thinking, you go to the DMV and have to prove who you are with multiple sources, multiple documents. Kind of the same thing. That way you're just positive they're who you are. The further back you get, the harder that gets. And more recent stuff is not as accessible online. Older stuff just didn't exist. That's why I said you may have to go to church records and find things. Um, the next thing you can do is check your house, check with your family, especially for documents on you, your aunts, you, your siblings, your parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles. You'd be surprised what's sitting around in scrapbooks or in fire safe boxes or just emergency folders at your grandparents' house. You'd be surprised with what's hanging around. I personally like to view the original or a scan of the original instead of relying on a transcript. Too many times I have seen transcripts that have been transcribed incorrectly because of either handwriting or not knowledge of the area. And it has totally thrown everything off. There is one record of my grandfather whose name was Thomas, and somehow it got transcribed to Tammy. So I couldn't find this record for years. And I finally just started scrolling through like you used to do with old microfilm. And there it was, Thomas Cantrell, but the handwriting was so loopy and decorative, they read it as Tammy. So it was transcribed completely inaccurately. And birth dates have been all mixed up. It's crazy what all you'll find. So try to view the original or a scan of the original if you can, just to make sure the information you're getting is actually what was written. Number 4, this one, it sounds like a nagging teacher. Cite your sources, but write down where you found the information. At some point in time in your research, either later on when you get stuck or you can't remember a fact, you want to go back and look at that original. Write down where you got it from. A lot of times on Ancestry and Family Search, there's ability to print the source citation actually on the document when you print it. It's a little box you check. Do it. It will save you so much frustration down the road if you write down where you got it. If you can't write down the whole thing, the whole big long citation, at least write that you got it on Family Search or you found it on Ancestry or you found it at the Greene County Library or you found it at the Akron Library, just so you know where to go back to. Number 5, remember why you started. Like I said earlier, you are going to fall down rabbit holes and you want to make sure you can bring yourself back to why you started and what information you're looking for. So if you wanted to know if your great great grandfather was a horse thief, like our story said, you can go back and you need to look at different information. Newspaper articles, court records, certificates, any of that kind of stuff you can look at. Now, remember back before Facebook and the internet, the newspaper was your main source of information. So this is where you would get all of the dirt, all of the tea on everybody and everything that was happening. The newspapers back in the day had information from everything from who planted what crops to who's getting married to who's in court to who got new siding on their house. You will be surprised what you can find once you start looking at these newspapers and you start poking around. So don't discount looking at the newspapers for your family's name and for the story you're looking for. Where can I find all of this great information that you're talking about? Here's a list of a lot. I said a lot, not all, of our sources for information here at the Greene County Public Library. The ones that are starred here are ones you need your library card for. The only one that you have to be in one of our buildings for is for Ancestry Library Edition. All the others you can use at home with your library card. Other places that are important to keep looking at, check with your family, talk with them. A lot of times, especially your older relatives, love talking about the family. Check with them. FamilySearch.org, it's another great resource. It's a lot like Ancestry, except it's free. You can set up your own tree and look for information and find records. Local library and local history room for the area that you're researching or around it. Things move, county lines move, cities move. So what may be Hamilton County now may have been a different county when your family was there. So if that makes sense, your records may be in different places. So check your local history for that specific area and a couple around it. Check your recorder's office, check your courts, check your registrar's office. for court records and legals and deeds and things like that, marriage license, marriage certificates, birth records, all of those types of things will help you get further in your research. Um, Remember to check your local libraries, see if you can get cards from where you are. If you're out of state, you may have to pay an out of state fee if you want to get a card from them. Here in the state of Ohio, if you are a resident of Ohio, you can get a library card to a public library anywhere. So my family went on a trip up to Akron. While I was up there, I knew I had a lot of research to do. I got an Akron library card, and them like us had a lot of these text only, or you have to have a library card to access newspapers specifically. With your card, you can do that. So hopefully this information helps you get started. Remember, if you have any questions, ask a librarian. They're more than willing to help you out. So just ask. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And I hope this helps you learn more about your family.